Hi there, this is a 50 minutes 53 seconds video. So I decided to record a 10-minute sample of the transcription I did recently. So please go ahead and watch it and let me know what you think. Thank you.
Travel Weekly's Future of Travel Week in partnership with Google. Sponsored by Rosa, Babbel, BD for Travel, Signpost Diagnostics, Travelor and Web Loyalty.
Welcome to the first day of Travel Weekly's Future of Travel Week in partnership with Google. This week of virtual interviews, presentations and discussions follows the success of last year's Future of Travel Selling Conference and has never been more necessary as the industry faces its greatest ever challenge. We have an incredible speaker lineup in store for you, from the chief executives of EasyJet, Carnival Corporation and Jet2, to the owners of Hays Travel and a host of other business leaders and experts in a range of fields. My thanks go to all of our speakers, to Google for their continued support of our Future of Travel activity, and to our sponsors, Rosa, Babbel, BD for Travel, Signpost Diagnostics, Travelor and Web Loyalty. You'll be hearing more from during the course of the week. We hope that you find this week insightful and helpful as you navigate the COVID crisis and continue the process of rebuilding your businesses. For our first session, and as part of today's focus on aviation, we hear from EasyJet Chief Executive Johan Lundgren on the importance of a sustainable future for aviation and his views on the future of the industry in conversation with Travel Weekly's Ian Taylor.
So welcome to this Travel Weekly webcast on the future of aviation, part of a series of webcasts on the future of travel through this week. I'm Ian Taylor of Travel Weekly and I'm joined by Johan Lundgren, Chief Executive of EasyJet. Johan's going to present his view on the future of aviation and then we'll have time for some Q&A. Johan, over to you.
Well, thank you very much for that, Ian, and for the introduction, and also for having me and giving me the opportunity to share some thoughts and reflections that I have about aviation as we go forward in the future. And the core theme, of what I was going to talk about and reflect upon was really about sustainability. And, the pathway, the way I see it to a world where aviation can continue to thrive and grow, but do so with less impact on the environment. But it's almost impossible, clearly, to do that, without putting the context of the current situation. The tremendously difficult and challenging situation that, the whole of the sector and the whole of the travel and hospitality and aviation sector is facing as part of the pandemic. And then also the government associated policies around that has a tremendous effect on what we're doing, and how that also can impact, if we're not very careful, very negatively, the transition that I was hoping for and that we are striving for in getting ourselves to a place where aviation can continue to grow with less impact on the environment as such. So I think that's kind of the key things that I would like to reflect upon. Now, I think first and foremost to say that, look, it goes without a shadow of a doubt that, the current situation means that EasyJet and many others are, imminently focusing on survival and managing through this crisis. I mean, this is beyond anything that we have ever seen before. And I think that one thing, though, that will come out of this, and then it remains to see, what is the industry going to look like and what is the fabric and the texture of what we know as a sector going to be like when we are evolving through this process. But if it is one thing that is certain, is that the topic on sustainability will be, even more important. There was a YouGov poll here done not recently where it showed that post-pandemic, what was the three top things that was on people's mind, and sustainability and the environment came as number one, even ahead of things like personal economy and other things. So this is something that we need to be absolutely clear about, that this could provide both a threat to the industries and the aviation transition towards a greener, practical operations of flying, but it could also present an opportunity if we are getting the right support and incentives from the authorities and from the governments. Now, aviation in a normal year emits about 900 million of carbon emissions, and at e.t.c. we have been working, since the start of the airline to fly in a very efficient way in order to reduce as much as we can of those emissions that we are in control of. But we also recognize that in this current environment, and I've seen those voices being raised, that in this year where, a lot of the industry has been grounded, that there will be 60 to 70% less of those CO2 emissions. And I've seen somewhere somebody say, well, that's fantastic, it's good for the planet. Well, I can assure you that I think that all of us would agree that it's actually a horrendous situation that we find ourselves in right now, that whilst it's good that we have less of the emissions, but how that is absolutely paralyzing, the economies, and how that is affecting people's livelihoods and the jobs, and also mental health as part of that. So surely flying less is not the solution in here. We need to find solutions where we can fly more with less impact on the environment. And like I said, we did, and you would be aware about that not long ago, last year, we took the decision as the first major airline in the world to offset the carbon emissions from the fuel we're using. So we are more or less carbon neutral in what we do. And the carbon offsetting is done into the project that is of the highest standards, that actually does what it says that it's supposed to do. It either avoids carbon emission from being emitted in the first place elsewhere on the planet, or it removes carbon emission that already been in the atmosphere. And we understand that this is not a perfect solution. We understand that this is not a long-term solution, but we believe it is absolutely, one of the few technological, solution that is available today before we get into new technologies. And I think that, carbon offsetting in the way that it's been done to the highest standards is a perfectly acceptable solution in that short term, as been proven by many governments, and also CORSIA as an example. We don't, however, think that the targets are ambitious enough to reach, like in the UK, net zero by 2050, or even by CORSIA and the standards and the decision that was made now that they were going to use the baseline now 2019 versus 2019 and 20 as a baseline for working out the formula around this. We don't believe it's ambitious at all. That means that some airlines would pay into the scheme here, 2025, 2026. And that is not what the customer would expect us to do. So we are arguing for a much more ambitious journey within this, where offsetting will play a major part on that. There are then looking at the technologically developments and advances, and there are actually some encouraging signs in here. These are the things that I think it's so important that we keep focus on in this current environment that is so difficult for us to find resources and funds to continue to support that. I come on to talk about that a little later on when I go on to describe what I think the government should do. But we have a cooperation with two companies primarily. One is White Electric in the US, which are focusing really on to bring on a full-scale 180-seater plus aircraft commercially available by 2030. That is all electric. And that is ambitious in every aspect you're looking at that. That is an ambitious plan. But I would just like to tell those people who say, well, that's impossible. The things that they said that they were going to do just 2 years ago was seen impossible then is now something that most of the people who are in the know about this admits that actually this could be working. One of the challenges when you're looking at the electric part of it, apart from the aerodynamics and the motor in itself, is actually the power and the capacity of the batteries. But if you would reckon that you have the same development of the battery technology, in the next 10 years as you had up until the 10 years
Alright, we already have 10 minutes sample of this video, so I believe you love what you are seeing. So please, if you love it, you can go ahead and message me so that I can start working for you immediately. Thank you.